Good evening, everyone. Tonight is the Town Council regular meeting, Wednesday, July 21st, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Rose Room. We will now stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move on to item number 2, visitors. Are there any visitors that would like to be recognized at this time? Any visitors? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to number 3, which is the approval of the minutes for the July 7th, 2021 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Number 4 is the appointments, reappointments. The Human Rights Committee with Thomas Schultz and Lori Jaffe are looking for appointments to the Human Rights Committee. We have a motion to approve.
I'd like to make that motion.
Second, Mark. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Sustainability Committee. We did have a request that came through in reference to the Sustainability Committee to request an increase in membership from 7 members to 8 members. So we decided to put it on the agenda to open it up to everybody to see anybody's feelings on increasing the number of members on that committee. Anybody have any comments to it? Do they in favor of it, opposed it?
More volunteers, the better.
Any-
More volunteers, the
better?
better.
Could we bump it up to 9? Does that make sense to go as far as 9?
Well, do they take votes? I mean, I don't know, you know.
Well, even numbers kind of bad when you have a vote. It could always be a 4-4.
But this suggestion came from them.
Correct.
If they feel that there is an issue, they would put that forward. I mean, if they feel
don't
in
know
the
what
future that they need 9, I think they wouldn't hesitate to come back and ask for that.
So 7 with alternates, 2 alternates?
They're
Yeah.
asking for 8 full
Is
members.
somebody here?
Right.
Yes.
You want
We would be,
Just state your name, please.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's
Catherine Zimechnik, Chair of
Yep.
Sustainability, yeah. We would be interested in perhaps just adding 2 alternates at this point.
Good.
So keep 7 and go to 2 alternates?
Yes.
So the names that we have in front of us tonight are for what positions?
Which names do you have?
Matt and Holly, those for
Holly and
the
Matt,
full or those
okay.
alternates, Mary?
They would be actually
There's one
regular
open?
members.
But how many people are on the committee
We
right
have
now?
7 now, right?
Six.
Oh, we have 6. Oh, that's right, 6.
one
spot.
And then we have an
Increase to
application
8.
for one
Correct.
member, and then another came in. We're very interested in.
So these
both
would
of
be
them.
of these 2, we would appoint 1.
Well,
But then you'd
But
have
they're
you're
asking
asking for an alternate seat. So
yes.
we could make an approval for 1 for a full seat and make the other an alternate.
Could do that,
Is that what you
if
want?
that, yeah.
No, I like that much better, Mr. Chairman.
Okay?
A lot better. Nice
Yeah.
suggestion, Harry.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah?
Any
Thank you.
preference,
All right.
Yeah, who
So we
would
make a
go
mo-
for the full seat?
yeah.
Well, we'd have to talk about that. That's next. So we got to we'll do this first and then we'll deal with that. So if everybody's good with that, we'll make a motion to increase membership, or not increase membership, keep membership at 7 and have 2 alternates.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to the appointment of the applications for, we have 2 names that came forward, Matt Granfield, Holly Ann Moriarty. So we need 1 full, 1 alternate?
Yes.
Okay.
From
So,
these nominees.
huh?
From these nominees.
Correct. So we'll look for a motion to appoint one of these 2 to a full seat.
That was just
Is
left.
either one of them
Nice to have input.
I believe Mr. Granfield is.
Is he here? Oh, he's here. You want to come up and say a few words or no? It's up to you.
Well, at least give us an idea. Would you rather be the full seat or
Yeah.
the alternate seat? What is your preference?
I'll take the full seat.
You don't sound too enthusiastic about it.
Not that sentence.
Yeah.
Well, listen, he showed up and he said it, so let's go. You want to make a motion? Anybody want to make a motion for
I'll make a
that?
motion to appoint Matt Granfield to the full seat on Sustainable.
A second?
Second.
Any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Then at this point, we'll just name Holly Ann Moriarty to the alternate seat. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. Thank you, Matt. See what happens when you show up, you get a full seat. If you didn't come, you might have been an alternate. All right, next up is the number 5, which is the Morgan Building Committee final report. Jerry is here to give us a little something.
Okay, Jerry Reese, Chairman of the Morgan Building Committee. Have a handout, I won't read it. But, welcome. Carol,
Thank you.
guys go.
Thank you, James.
Mr. Donovan and Mr. Richards. Okay. We have finally completed the process, so we can, the final approval that we needed from the state was a Lomar application. FEMA was working with us on that, and our engineers, Langen Engineering, it's finally been completed. So we don't have any more bills to pay or expenses incurred. We completed the project under budget, $19,000, so out of the $65 million budget. And then in the letter, I kind of described the net cost of the town is more like $37 million after you've done state reimbursements. So I don't know if anybody else is here. Dennis Donovan, of course, he's been with us from the beginning. Thank you, Dennis. Mary Ann O'Donnell from the school is here. She was so instrumental in getting the school working properly once it was completed. I'd like to thank the citizens of the town of Clinton that supported us throughout the whole thing. And of course, Mary Scatino was with us at almost every single meeting. There were accomplishments. So, anyway, I'll let you read the rest of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. So at this point, I guess, having the letter, I mean, first of all, we're going to thank everybody that was involved in this process from the beginning to the end. Worked hard to put this project together and see it from beginning to end. At this point, knowing that it is the final report, we'll look for a motion to disband the Morgan Building Committee.
I will make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
I'll
Thank you.
abstain.
Abstain, Your Honor. Okay. Thanks again, Jerry.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on now to number 6, which is the Fire Department Facility Assessment Report. We should talk about these first. Check that out. Both of those. So basically.
All right.
That was easy.
No pressure. Good evening. My name's Mike Shove. I'm a representative of the public from the head fire Guilford, Clinton, Clinton Volunteer Fire Department Headquarters Feasibility Study. So the committee members on this committee are Mike Neff as the chair, Carol Walters, council representative, Pete Neff, citizen, Mike Shove, citizen, Bob Voss, vice chair, Jeff Hesser, Fire Marshal Jim Strong, firefighter, and Brian Manware, fire chief. All right, so the purpose, I don't want to read off the slides, but I'll kind of touch on the purpose and how we started, how we got going, and how things went. So the Clinton Fire Department facility study commenced in December of 2019 on the creation of the Department Utilization Study Committee by the Town Council. The committee was tasked with reviewing the current and future needs facing the department as it pertains to the fire headquarters facility. The review would include a study of the current and future needs, the current configuration of space utilization within the building, and current location of headquarters to include expansion capability and access of personnel and equipment and property restrictions. You also, you should have been provided with a binder, and I'll kind of reference some of those things with the complete study and more detailed information. These are kind of the highlights of the PowerPoint. So the Clinton Volunteer Fire Department is a 109-year-old organization comprised of approximately 75 active members that provide fire suppression, fire prevention, public education, rescue, marine, and emergency medical services to the town of Clinton and its visitors. Additionally, the Clinton Volunteer Fire Department responds and assists other public safety agencies in numerous surrounding towns as part of the Valley Shore Mutual Aid Association. That's kind of the 10 towns or 12 towns throughout all of Valley Shore that go mutual aid in the event that somebody has a bigger event than normal within their town or community. And also onto Long Island Sound with the Marine, with the vessel. General information, the department serves approximately 12,950 full-time citizens in addition to thousands of seasonal and transient population, responding to approximately 2,000 calls a year annually. The CVFD operates out of two stations. Fire headquarters, located at 35 East Main Street, over here, is the primary headquarters. And they house 2 engines, 1 aerial, 1 heavy rescue, 1 medical rescue, 3 ambulances, 2 brush trucks, 1 utility truck, a staff car, and there's probably a lot of other stuff in there as well. There's a lot crammed in there out of the headquarters station. Station 2, which is located up at 149 Glenwood Road, houses an engine, which is say spare engine, engine and a tanker, a Zodiac boat, and a rehab bus. So in the event that they need additional rehabilitation on scene for larger events. So introduction and overview. In 2015, it became apparent to the Clinton Volunteer Fire Department was experiencing space shortages for fire apparatus. Believe it or not, they keep building fire apparatus bigger and bigger, and the house usually stays the same size. Support equipment, related supplies, support equipment and related supplies. The department conducted an internal assessment on potential solutions for space in addition to other departmental needs. That assessment identified the following, and they're included but not limited to apparatus bay space, and in your book you have actual diagrams of the bay space, what engines, what trucks and vehicles are located in each bay, in each phase. Maintenance area, so where maintenance is completed, increased severe weather events. So it's another one. Over the last 10 years, obviously we've seen an increase in hurricanes, blizzards, tornadoes today. It's scary, but a lot of different increased weather events over the last 10 years. Standby living quarters. Supply storage, equipment storage, administrative storage. That's another one I think for any town facilities, administrative record storage. It's getting more and more paper and looking for places to store it. And health and wellness. I want to minimize health and wellness. It's just as important as everything else. So we'll talk about that. 2016, the CVFD requested funding for an addition to fire headquarters as part of the long-term capital planning. And any detailed questions on that, Brian or Mike, you can jump in and answer. 2017, the CVFD incorporated at the direction of the Board of Selectmen, hired the town engineering consultant DTC to complete a feasibility study for a proposed addition to fire headquarters. In 2018, the first select person at the time requested the department temporarily remove the addition from capital plan pending further review. In 2019, the town council officially created the headquarters feasibility study committee to review the facility as related to the current and future needs, development recommendations. So that's how we got to where we are today. The study methodology areas. So these are the areas that we used to analyze a couple different areas. So storage was evaluated the overall review of current storage availability as it relates to various functions and the mission of the department. training, review of current training facilities within the department to maintain OSHA, ISO, and EMS required training. The facility itself, review the facility as it relates to operational requirements. And then the site, the actual site that the headquarters sits on, to review that and relate it to the future feasibility of maintaining or expanding services within that site. When we looked at it, does not meet current needs. The survey result indicate does not meet the current needs of the department today. Meets the current needs, sustainability, so sustainable. Survey results indicated that the needs being met are sustainable for the foreseeable future, and then not sustainable, which they were addressed to not meet the foreseeable needs for the future. And there's also comments and different stuff. And again, the detailed information is provided in your binder. If you want, flip through and look at it. So town expenses, capital expenses, and this slide outlines both the corporate and the town. So the corporation itself putting forward capital expenses and the town. And these are some of the breakdowns of the project additions and the amounts. So the addition, the last addition, the corporation put forward $500,000 and the town put forward $380,000. So it's been a balanced relationship on both sides of maintaining capital. And I think the other intent of the slide was to show that over the history of the building and the additions, they've done a good job maintaining both corporate and town, of maintaining capital and keeping it in good shape. So overall, there's been approximately $1.5 million into this building and capital expenses throughout 1992 to present. Headquarters storage. So we get, there's a lot of photos or a lot of pictures of some, a little bit kind of paint the picture of what's going on there. If you've never been there, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to do a walkthrough and actually walk through the site and be able to kind of get a better look. The general review of available storage related to the department function indicates lack of sufficient storage space to support various functions required for today's fire medical services. So essentially, we're kind of growing out of it already at this point. These affected areas of the department, including but not limited to bulk EMS storage, training, prop storage, spare equipment, general supplies, administrative, and patient records. So the need to maintain all of this stuff based on the Connecticut General Statutes for record retention and all of these things, everybody's bound by the same requirements. It's continuing to grow and grow. Headquarters training. So the cognitive training facility, if anybody's been in the training room, while existing classroom meets the needs, is likely to continue to do so in the future. We require some updates to technology infrastructure. So we're going to continue to update the technology in there. Classroom space is also used as a meeting conference room, cafeteria during fundraising, memorial events. It's essentially an all-purpose room. Whatever the purpose that's needed for that night or day, that's kind of what happens there. The training in general. The department lacks a true hands-on facility that are permanent. Currently hands-on training provided at headquarters using portable equipment and props are set up prior to and broken down after each drill, so nothing's fixed or in place at the facility itself. Outside of town are often used for more extensive training to meet OSHA requirements, and off-site training facilities tend to come with incurred costs to require the department to take assets out of town and people out of town, which cuts into response for the town at the time. This leaves the town vulnerable, and if an emergency were to occur while the department's training out of town, hands-on and practical training areas do not meet the current needs at the training side. And there's some pictures of just what's been used for training. Again, a lot of this is all portable and moved around, so it requires instructors to come in before the training events, set all this up, and instructors to come and take all this down, so trucks can be backed into the bays. Facility food prep, used during large-scale incidents, classes, and fundraisers. Meets the current needs. Administrative services, our current office space is scattered throughout the building. While not ideal, it does meet the current needs. EMS decontamination it's currently shared with the storage room, provides limited ability to safely decon any reusable equipment and individuals exposed in the course of their duty. And it doesn't really meet the current needs. Obviously, with contamination today in today's fire service, carcinogens and long-term cancer are a big issue. So decontamination is critical, and also with bloodborne pathogens and EMS response, any motor vehicle accident or any type of EMS in today's world of COVID-19. Department laundry. So there's a commercial gear extractor, and that's hard to see, but if we were doing a walkthrough, that's that little machine back there. The gear extractor is made to use at certain temperatures, so the water heats up to a certain degree, specific to the PPE for structural firefighter turnout gear. There's presently no standards for a standard clothes washer, so there's not a clothes washer. So if somebody's not washing their turnout gear, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, their station uniform or EMS gear, they come off an ambulance run and get some nasty on them, and they want to. There's no current existing structure for turnout or regular street clothes or service wear cleaning. And then there is a washer or dryer space to accommodate one, but it doesn't meet the current needs. Decontamination, personnel are exposed to complex hazards, we just talked about that. There's presently one functioning shower, but no locker room. So there's no locker room facility and one shower. So everyone essentially has to use that same shower. It's not two separate areas for male, female, or actual locker room. Air pack maintenance. The town owns and the department maintains over 50 air packs. Air packs are checked and serviced monthly after every use. The air pack maintenance area needs to be clean area with no grease or large amounts of dust. It does not meet the current needs. So as you can see, this is the entire area for maintenance and sustainment of equipment, reusable equipment. The equipment maintenance small. The department maintains thousands of pieces of small equipment, including hand tools, power tools, saws, portable pumps, and it does not meet the needs for the maintenance of that. The equipment maintenance apparatus. When possible, apparatus are maintained and repaired in-house to contain costs as well as keep apparatus in town. Does not meet current needs for apparatus maintenance. Standard living quarters. The department staff 24 hours a day for as long as needed during major weather or other emergencies. This requires facilities to house, feed, and support those operations as well as meet life safety codes. So again, we talked about the recent weather events, blizzards, floods, snowstorms, hurricane. There's a lot of stuff. Hopefully not more to come, but unfortunately I don't think that's the case. For facility, we talked about in your book you have maps on the feasibility of the actual locations of apparatus, trucks, and vehicles, and hopefully, again, at some point we do a walk through the facility. It would definitely help to understand it or look at the full picture. The site conditions, I think that's probably one of the most critical things, and towards the back end of this book you'll look at the DTC study specifically talking about this site. And let's see, we want to start with this, but we'll kind of close out with this. It's currently available acreage. The site is composed of 1.4 acres of land. To the west is bordered by Indian River. To the north is the railroad tracks. To the east is the cemetery, Cemetery Lane, and to the south is Main Street. The building and apron currently occupy an estimated 90% of the available area in that site. The department essentially is locked down with no ability to expand outside of the current footprint. So in the event that it would potentially have to go up, not out, there's no more additional room to go out. I think this is probably one of the most critical pieces to the whole thing. Obviously, flooding and FEMA flood zones and all of those things are more and more on everybody's radar. So the flood hazard is estimated 75% of the current site located in the floodplain. So again, this blue indicates the actual floodplain, and when you look at the FEMA SLOSH maps for level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 flooding, we're already well into the 1 at 75% of that site. And I know you could probably speak better to it of how much water you've experienced in those areas before. And obviously Superstorm Sandy was one of those big kind of eye-openers of wow, just how close that water can get to a lot of places. Due to the storm, the rapid rise and CBFD headquarters was evacuated during Superstorm Sandy. So trying to maintain a footprint there, you would obviously, in the DTC study, it really kind of gets in depth about more of the FEMA information and requirements and building requirements in a floodplain. The location itself, in terms of being on Route 1, right on East Main Street, Route 1, the location is problematic for several reasons. Access in and out of the site is through a single access point. So in the event that there's any sort of catastrophic failure, there's no plan B, or you'd have to come up with a plan B real quick. So any emergency services or EOC, we want a plan A, a plan B. So at least providing two ways in for emergency access in the event they had to get out a different way. During the summer months, obviously, anybody that's traveled Route 1 in the summer, you're familiar with the traffic. And there's no traffic control or no lights at that. It's not an Opticom or controlled intersection when emergency apparatus is leaving. So no road markings or signage to place protect access points. So this is floodplain. So this is the proposed addition by that DTC study, correct? Yep. Okay, yeah. So this is what the DTC study looks at in the back of the book. Getting approval to add significant addition while into a floodplain would be difficult. These are the recommendations or what the feedback was from DTC. The cost of the addition compared to the long-term sustainability of building. So again, how much money are you going to put into a building that's already in a flood zone and making it, hardening the walls and making it FEMA compliant for floods? And does the additional benefits don't fully address the town's needs? Some of the other things we talked about throughout the time we met as a committee was the Emergency Operations Center. So presently, the town uses the PD's community room, while it does not provide adequate accommodations for long-term sustained events. Additionally, this location does not meet the FEMA 2015 suggestions. So they transformed the community room into EOC, right? And then we also talk about backup dispatch. The event, if the town is looking at building a new firehouse, long-term thinking is backup for event failure at the dispatch center. Not to say that that's primary, but in a larger scale event, if the dispatch center, for some reason, there's a plan A and a plan B, the capabilities are met. And then bulk storage. That's another thing throughout this COVID experience of working with the state and every week picking up additional supplies to have masks, gloves, gowns, and all these things on hand, the proper PPE. The state did a great job of providing certain things and large amounts of things, but storage is a real problem. I think for most departments and towns, all right, where are we going to put all these boxes? And now we have to sustain them for a period of time. Hopefully, as COVID moves on. Conclusion recommendations. Committee did not employ professional services during the review for the current department facilities and noted several locations that need to verify certain information. And anything that needs to be updated within the plan, we're more than willing to go back to and update. The committee is composed of a variety of members who each brought background knowledge and valuable information included to this report. Appropriate documents and supportive information were provided where appropriate. The headquarters site has a significant issue regarding safety of pedestrians, drivers, and the department personnel responding to the site, to and from the site. Headquarters, as well as access to East Main Street, is located in the storm surge flood zone. Can't take that away. Can't change that. The site has limited potential for expansion. Fire headquarters was designed and constructed in phases, starting from 1968, a remodel in 1992, before sustainable design and standards were set in place. So this was pre-sustainable design and standards. The building envelope, HVAC systems, lighting, plumbing were not compliant with the current sustainable design standards. Throughout the headquarters building, administrative gear and equipment storage needs are exceeding the available space. The apparatus and the aprons do not meet current fire station design guidelines. The apparatus bays and doors are small relative to current equipment standards and limited to the selection and use of emergency vehicles. And PPE storage is currently stored on the walls, and the bay is exposing the bay area to off-gassing and exposing to UV damage, moisture contaminants. So basically where the gear storage is, UV light is a big indicator. Today's structural fire gear costs about $2,500 per set of structural fire gear just for one set, and leaving that in an area where there's UV light and breaks that down over time is less than favorable. And then sufficient walking space around between apparatus, park back to back, and that's another one. Come on out and take a look and see kind of how things are stored and how things are laid out. Administrative spaces are crowded and lacking appropriate space for operations, for records retention, administrative personnel. Decontamination areas are not sufficient size and lack appropriate facilities and equipment to meet today's standards. And administrative services have increased significantly over the years with extensive requirements for personnel, training, maintenance, and EMS patient records. In addition, increased needs to keep extensive PPE in stock has highlighted the lack of appropriate space and storage at headquarters. Except for the equipment other than apparatus, all areas of the department used for support services are under stress. Except the classroom facilities, training facilities are inadequate to meet the OSHA standards required. All personnel requiring the department to hold extensive training out of town for numerous occasions. So I think that the goal too is in the event you're going to look at a new facility, you want to incorporate training as well into those things. It's the committee's recommendation to the town council to appoint the existing feasibility study committee to work with the town manager and begin the process of identifying sustainable land to construct a new fire headquarters that will meet the needs of the town and the department needs for decades to come. Additionally, we request that the town begin the process of procuring a firm to work with the committee to develop conceptual designs and professional cost estimates. That's it. Any questions?
Bang. So now, I mean, obviously, we can understand all that, obviously by you guys presenting that to us and knowing what you've gone through. And thank you to everybody on the committee that obviously did all this work for all this. Town-wide, as far as space availability, like, I mean, what you're thinking?
Carol?
Yeah.
What?
I know there's Carol's work with, I believe, Brian and Mike on looking at identifying spaces,
Right.
and that's a big piece of it.
Right.
Because what is potentially obtainable for space? What land is available? What, does it fit the right thing? You gotta look at, call area, density. You talk about ISO or that Station 2, and in there it talks about why Station 2 was created in the detailed part of the study. All of these things are critical components to kind of putting it all together.
And it's not just the quantity of land that you need, the location is so important. They need to be
Absolutely.
as equidistant as they can be to the personnel that they have for an emergency response time. They need to be centrally located. It's tough to find land that meets those criteria on top of the size needs that you need and the buildability factor.
I would say that besides having the funding options, procuring land would probably be one of the more difficult things to do. We have looked at specific sites that would meet our need. One happens to be vacant and it's the right size and in a good area that we could make work. We just didn't want to put any specific sites within the report or the presentation because of obvious reasons.
Right.
Our charge was to look at the existing
Yep,
structure.
no, agree.
And look at all the detail.
Right.
Have you looked at the GIS data and plotted out where your most central?
Yes.
So tentatively we have, with the new CAD, it's supposed to have become a little bit easier. We're just waiting for more data collection. But on the other hand, responding to most of the events, we kind of know where our most vulnerable areas are, where our busiest areas are. On top of that, it's knowing where the biggest cluster of our responders are to make sure that they can get to that area within a reasonable amount of time to get apparatus on the road too.
Can they be pinpointed in the current system then so that you can get a better assessment?
If you want more detail, we can absolutely do that in terms of, hey, here's all 75 responders, here's where they live, here's the number of calls per year, here's 2,000 calls within this year, and look at 5 years of data and trending, and say, hey, based on that, look at a 5-mile response from each place, and potentially look at land identifiable there. We haven't gotten that deep because the goal was to kind of talk about what we had, what exists currently, and what the needs are. I think the next step is saying, hey, we're at a point where it's probably not the best idea to do anything in the existing site that's there. The FEMA floodplain alone is one of those, everybody, all shoreline towns are looking at, hey, let's move critical infrastructure out of floodplains. So I think next step from there would say, hey, let's take that, because that's a good amount of manpower work to put all that data in and get the information out. But that's the best part. You get all your responders in this area and know that most of your calls are in this area, but not one bit of land. So those are things that I say next steps to potentially work through.
And Christine, to your point there, it also, when you look at it from an ISO standard rating, they look for distances from also your neighboring town's firehouses. And that's where the parcel comes in, where the North Station was. Because of the location on East Main Street, we needed to bridge the gap, the distance to where Killingworth is. Usually 5 to 10 miles are the numbers that ISO uses. So you got to look at where Madison is located. You got to look at where both the Westbrook stations are located, the Killingworth station, that kind of idea. So there's a lot of moving parts to that. I think that's where the committee's next recommendation is to go to that next step and start looking at that.
Mike, are you familiar with other communities of comparable size who have undergone this type of process? Just to have maybe a blueprint or a template of how this plays out?
Yeah, I mean, well, if they're not rebuilding on the same spot versus actually moving, I think, I'd say you could look across the state and look at new firehouses. Branford's not a good example because Branford was built exactly as it is and they had the land. The challenges are different here. And I think, it's always existed here since 1968. And now it's like, okay, flooding is, in this last 10 years, FEMA flood maps, and now the building requirements, the site requirements are not what they were 50 years ago. But when you build a new firehouse, you're talking about building something for 50 years. So it takes time to make the right decisions and look at what's best in all those areas. But again, you're inhibited by the land use of what exists for land and the ability for the town to find it. So as much as it's sometimes the same as somewhere else, the other potential is looking at, the other things to look at is the ability to capitalize on federal money or state money in these times where, construction projects or assistance to towns to post-COVID is, this potentially could be not the best time, but a good time to look at potentially offsetting municipal funds with state or federal government funds. But I think there's a lot of moving parts and pieces. I think we'll just, let's say, slowly work through the next step, or hey, we made it through step 1, we're here, and now, okay, we'll get to step 2.
I have a question. Who's next?
Only 2 questions, no.
For regional opportunities, I know we had conversations about the dispatch and creating such an opportunity for that, and that would obviously change the viewpoint of what's required in terms of space if it was located in a different location and or if it became a regional location for this. Was that part of the conversations that you had in terms of the study?
In terms of regionalize anything?
Just specific services that are currently being incorporated into the building. We had conversations early on about the dispatch services and opportunities to regionalize the service. So if that ever became an opportunity, whether or not this building could become that location and or whether or not that element of the what is required was considered to be removed from that.
I don't think we've even explored those. And the goal of the dispatch side of things was more, I can tell you in Guilford, we have our dispatch centers, and then the EOC becomes that fallback if there's ever a failure. It's more of an internal town that, once the dispatch centers become overwhelmed or there's too many calls because there's 100 trees and wires and everybody's calling at the same time, that EOC's function is to absorb that additional workload and the ability to communicate. And it's also, God forbid, the white powder calls, the sick COVID buildings. If you need to temporarily move somewhere, you're still within your own communication platform. I don't think long-term dispatch we primarily focused on this, the storage, the training. The training is critical too. That was more not really in I'd say the dispatch side of things. We could explore anything. The goal was to.
Anybody else?
I have one other question.
Oh.
Just one more. Just in terms of the EMS patient records, are those supposed to be digitalized, and then who is supposed to be ultimately housing them? So I'm assuming
most systems use a software system or an EPCR, electronic patient care reporting system, but most billing companies, and I don't know in terms of your requirements here, we still have to print the paper part and record them, and it's maintain them. So yeah, so as much as everything is digitalized and goes to the state, we still have to maintain paper copies by the records retention schedule for the state.
so that has to change.
You can get it changed.
Anybody else?
Sure.
Just simplify for me, how much land are you looking for? And square footage of the new building?
So I think getting 3 acres. So one of the big pieces and components to training in the NFPA and ISO world is 3 acres. So 3 acres gives you have to have 3 acres, a training tower greater than 3 stories, and an NFPA compliant training building. Gives you the ability, that's the reason a lot of times you go out of town. Every firefighter has to have 18 hours a year of what are called T1 or training facility and use hours. So that's kind of what drives that goal of the 3 acres. Because if you're gonna build a new building, you want to try and make sure it fits all those needs. So 3 acres, a 3-acre parcel, training tower, 3 stories. And training tower, the way they look at that is, if you look at like Brantford's training tower or Guilford's, really it could be a clock tower, but there's some sort of training function, but it's a requirement of NFPA in order to allow you to use those hours for ISO. So ISO is the Insurance Service Office and dictates the fire protection level for the town.
Taking that into account, tell me how long, years wise that will encompass,
How, if you build a new building,
years wise.
how long,
What's
sustainability?
the projection?
Yeah, but normally 40 to 50 years. So if you look at the existing buildings from 1968, and then the addition was in 1992. And then it's funny, because, you know, if you drive along the shoreline, I thought our building in Guilford was big, and then you drive to Brantford, it's even bigger, and it's like, wow.
Huge.
But as fast, as big as these buildings are, look at the, the vehicle size, the additional storage requirements. If you're better to, plan for the future and have that space, because you don't want to build a building again.
Actually go even larger than 3 acres. And, you're-
That would be
It's minimal.
the goal to be the minimum.
Any other council members have any questions at this time? No? All right.
Hopefully we can get a tour too.
Okay. And now, obviously, it's just going to continue to be an open discussion as we go forward, and the committee stays open and continue to do what we need to do. And it looks like it's all Carl's going to be his problem, so we're just going to give everything to Carl because the town manager stuff, so. So it'll be good. But again, thank you for all obviously the work you do. Obviously, we know that we need to do something. It's going to be a long-term project. It's going to be something that, it's going to be, something that we work on going forward. So,
Thanks for your time.
thank you again.
Here's a base elevation.
I believe base elevation it's in the DTC report, but I know there's that slide there. Yeah. But if you actually go to the DTC report, I believe it's 8 feet. I think it's 8 feet probably.
The reason for that wall was to help protect against the water.
Yeah. The reason the walls on the riverbank are falling into the river,
Okay.
but it doesn't give you any increased elevation because the two ends don't exceed the length of the river. And the drains.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
All right, we will now move on to number 7, which is the capital carry forward project closeout. Everybody has the list in front of them of the list of all the projects. Does anybody have any questions or comments on any of these projects? All right, hearing none, then we can look for a motion to approve the capital carry forward project closeouts.
I'll make that motion.
A second?
Second.
Any other further discussion?
Do we need to put a figure in there, Mary? Do we need to have the 17,000?
Doesn't matter.
No, that doesn't have to be.
If you'd like to.
It's attached to the agenda.
Or as attached.
As
Okay,
attached?
all right.
Everybody good? Okay.
Yes.
All right, any other further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Now, we will go through, we have a whole bunch of the line item transfers. First one here, I don't know what order you guys have them in. The one I have first is town manager, which is the $5,000 for the donation to the Chamber of Commerce for the town of Clinton Fireworks. Have a motion to approve?
Also moved.
Second? Any discussion? Oh,
Is there just clarification? I know in the past we had it come out of the town clerk's budget. Is that where it's coming from, or is this a
Just continue.
contingency.
so it's not being moved in from
Yep.
there?
Nope.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Next one is the town manager to reallocate the capital project funds within the town manager budget to fiscal year 21 land use permit project. Any questions on this one? No? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Next is DPW, which is an overextended in equipment maintenance for 255618. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Or can I get a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Next, the finance fiscal year 21 to reclassify from the contingency for salary and other payroll-related accounts for overages due mainly to union contract settlements in fiscal year 21 not budgeted, $52,644. Any questions on this one? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Next one is police to cover overage in vehicle maintenance for a total of $646. Any questions or comments? Motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any other further discussion?
Can I just backtrack just a little? Mary, I abstained from the 52,644. Well,
Okay.
all right.
All in favor of the police transfer?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Next up is Park and Recs, to cover shortfall in Park and Rec, other supplies with transfer from Park and Rec part-time, $513. Any questions? Motion to approve? A second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Next up, other general government, fiscal year '21, to cover shortfall in accounts within the other general government budget totaling $2110. Any questions? Motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. We will now move on to the Finance Director's report. Sue?
You all have the June preliminary reports in front of you in the packet. These represent very preliminary results for fiscal year '21, as the invoices are continuing to be processed for '21, and year-end expenses that require accounting entries and additional invoices to come through are still under process. The normal and recurring charges have been recorded and are reflected in those statements, and also some of the more significant entries with dollar values in them have been reported so that I could present those transfers to you this evening. I just wanted to also let you know that some other departmental charges are coming in, some larger dollar items such as the Board of Ed expenses. They're still processing invoices for '21 utility charges. Those are also still coming in. Typically, most invoices take about 45 days to come in after the close. I've set the Monday, August 16th is our final day to get invoices in and to close all the encumbrances. And then once those are processed, and other expenses will be approved as well, so I'll have a better handle on it at that time. Results for the 12 months of the year so far, preliminary revenues are about $3.9 million over budget. To the positive, with 2.2 being that of the sale of the old Morgan, and the remainder being the higher tax revenues and the additional town service revenues, and some additional grant monies we received this year. Preliminarily, expenses are also forecast to be less than budget, but however, like I said, this is also very preliminary at this point. Certain departments I am expecting to have savings in, such as for medical insurance, fringe benefits, and some other general government items, due to like unused contingency and other unused professional services as well. The contingency account prior to this line item transfer that was approved tonight was $235. After this line item transfer which you approved, which was for the salary overages that I had been forecasting, it'll be approximately $182,000. The fund balance calculation remains unchanged. Other significant thing is in June we did receive 50% of our coronavirus American Federal Relief Act funding of the $1.9 million that was received at the beginning of June. That is not reflected in these statements because that sits in a separate fund outside of the general fund. And that pretty much summarizes my report.
Any questions for Sue?
So this, you said that we received the first payment, 1.9 million from the ARPA. Will we be receiving a second payment? Do we have any idea of how much that will be?
The same amount,
It'll be
1.9 next year sometime.
Gotcha.
Yeah, probably about the same time.
Anybody else?
I just had a question where we stand. I know the water and hydrants was going to be increasing, and I don't know what the total increase and whether there was any more conversation, not that you would have conversations with Connecticut Water, but whether or not we've been able to have any conversations with them about those increases. That's a Carl question, though.
The rates are determined by Pura, so I don't believe they were terribly successful with Pura. I thought they did not do as well as they expected.
Even with, so the fire hydrants as well, my understanding that Pura was not setting the rates in terms of that, and that was on the local, under local control related to the, whoever the Connecticut Water, Hyperion, is that accurate? And was there any ability?
That does not sound intuitively right, where each town negotiates. It's a linear foot and then a cost per hydrant, so there's a very fixed formula that's applied. Doesn't make intuitive sense to me that there would be 169 different fire hydrant rates. That doesn't make any
Just curious
sense.
if there's a conversation on it.
We did have conversations with them building the budget to verify their numbers and the forecast that they provided.
That was your best estimate at the time when it was built into the budgets.
You good?
Yeah, no, I just named, in our meetings with the Connecticut Water Company, again, Pura has not made a final determination, it's actually extended it for the 30 days. I think they did talk about not increasing the fire hydrant charge to the extent that they had projected. So they're going to lessen the increase. Still, they want an increase, but it's going to be less than forecasted.
So are you saying they're keeping their public comment period open for 30 days, or they're,
Yeah, it's been extended.
so if anybody wants to write them a letter and let them know their views on the fees, now's the time.
Anybody else? Thank you, Sue. All right, we'll now move on to number 10, which is council discussion on future projects. Anybody have any comments?
I do if nobody does.
Huh?
I do if no one does.
Then have at it.
As part of this conversation on future projects, I do want to revisit the goal-setting session that we had as council. This goes back to October of 2020. Might have been derailed a little bit with COVID and doing electronic meetings instead of in-person meetings. But want to reacquaint you with what we discussed and what we went over. It might be a way to help you focus your thoughts on future projects that you want to work together as a group on. Going around now is the indicators of success, which is what you agreed would be where the town needed to be successful. So that included building professionalism, having responsible budgets, having public trust, public engagement, collaborative work environment for employees, inclusive government, providing opportunities for involvement, and providing quality public services or good value for the tax dollar. I've given you a little bit of a narrative about what's been done. So for professionalism, we brought on a new town attorney who's bringing more resources to the table than we had before. We were able to recruit and hire a qualified building official. Under responsible budgets, the 2021 budget had no tax increase. The 21-22 budget had a reduction in the mill rate. For public engagement, we've had new committees created which provide opportunities for volunteers to participate and bring new voices to the conversation. And a budget preference survey was put out to get public feedback. For collaborative work environments, there's been some collaboration between departments. In the agenda packet, you have a letter from the police chief speaking to the collaboration between the PD and DPW. But also you've got the Clinton Community Assistance Team, which is to provide outreach to senior citizens and those that are disabled, and a joint effort of the police department, the Citizens Police Academy, and Human Services. And inclusive government, again, provides that new committee structure. The actual goals that you agreed to, I have going around now. Again, when we talked about the goals, it was trying to look beyond today, look to when you can start influencing things, so it's looking beyond the crisis of the moment and trying to project forward. It was trying to identify a destination that the council wants to achieve at the end of 5 years. It's also about your own personal benefit of why you wanted to be a council member, to accomplish something during your time on the board, and consensus on direction, so it was an agenda everyone could work on. Goal 1 was prioritize, evaluate, and control expenditures to mitigate impact on taxpayers and maintain a stable tax rate. The definitions that I heard from you were sound government, strong bond rating, fiscal discipline, and meeting fiscal challenges. So what we've done since the goal setting is we've preserved our bond rating, we've adopted new finance policies which support the bond rating. There's been strong interest in Clinton's debt, which has helped us secure low interest rates and restructure debt so that we can control our budget better. The 0% and reduced mill rates for the last 2 budgets, and we've been started using financial forecasting to look ahead. Goal 2 was providing the most cost-effective services possible. So in this particular case of looking at efficiency there's been more utilization of cooperative bids when it makes sense. We became a member of the Capital Region Purchasing Council to piggyback off of their bid structure. The permitting system with now your approval on the transfer gives us the ability to not only just do land use and building, but expand into other departments, giving the public a 21st century experience. And I'll be introducing performance measurement to the management team to start giving you reports that show not only inputs into departments or outputs, but trying to get into efficiency measures. Goal 3 was to preserve and enhance the quality of life that makes Clinton a desirable location. The actions that have been done to implement that goal are we had the successful STEEP grant for facade improvements in the downtown, the Yukon Stormwater Corps that I reported on previously to help aid in modeling low-impact development, having town properties be the showcase for that. And as you know, seeking grants to construct a fish ladder behind the Indian River Landing development. Goal 4 was economic development that enhances the community. So in this particular case, the things that we've done is funded a position to conduct business outreach, was added to the budget and included when the budget was passed. We have the ongoing efforts of the EDC with the manufacturers group. Tax abatement was approved for Indian River Landing to support economic development, and the purchase and sale agreement was modified to allow that project to move forward given the COVID economy of the time. Goal 5 was better inform and engage our community and its stakeholders. So we have updated the town's website to improve look and navigation, make it easier to find materials. The town's social media presence has been formalized with a Facebook page. Goal 6 was promoting a town organization that is sustainable and maintains employee morale, productivity, and effectiveness. So again, we've got the new town attorney who's provided training. She's done a couple of boards and commissions now to help them stay on point for what their authorities are. She's also been very supportive of staff, helping make sure that they understand the issues of their individual departments. And again, with Ed's retirement, we were able to recruit a qualified building official. We had several candidates to pick from, so it was a positive that we've been able to be viewed as an employer that people want to come to. So I'd like to put the goals in front of you to make sure that it's, again, in your mind, you remember what we discussed, remember what you wanted to accomplish, and then using this as a lens to look at for future projects you want to talk about or work on. If it advances and fits within the goal structure, that would be ideal to help us move forward as a community and work together as a council. I'll be bringing it back to you as our gentle reminder at future meetings also, to make sure we're focused on the goals.
Thank you, Carl. Any comments? Anybody else? Yeah.
I just wanted to bring your attention to Branford just passed a fairly robust blight, not just ordinance, but a process. Yeah, it's and it's been fairly well reviewed around the state, so if you want to take a look at it, I think it'd be helpful for us.
I believe we have it, and we've already looked at it. Yeah. So we're well aware of that.
Anybody else? All right, thank you. Moving on to number 11, Chairman's reports. Just quickly, I'm just going to read through a letter that we did receive from the Chief of Police. Dear Chairman Anisco, I would like to take a moment to notify you and the Council of the tremendous work that the Department of Public Works has been doing to assist the Police Department and the local traffic authority in improving both traffic and pedestrian safety here in town. Over the past 2 years, Director Heidrich and his crew have helped us make significant safety improvements at the following locations: Commercial and Grove Triangle, Ferry Dell Road and Long Hill Road, Jarrett Elliott Middle School, Liberty Street and Glenwood Road, Brickyard Road and Valley Road. Further improvements are also slated for Kelseytown Bridge Road, Tower Hill Road, Pleasant Valley Road, Carter Hill Road, Long Hill Road, and Hammock Road. Public Works is an often overlooked link in the public safety chain. Their continued responsiveness and willingness to go above and beyond to help make improvements to our town should be recognized and commended. My commission and I are certainly grateful to enjoy such wonderful cooperation and collaboration with all of Clinton's emergency services. We also appreciate of the support and commitment that the council and town manager provided. Respectfully, Vincent DeMeo, Chief of Police. And we will second that thought about all the hard work for the DPW and the collaboration that they've had with the town. It's been great. Move on to number 12, Town Manager's Report.
So you have my written report, just a couple of things to call to your attention and emphasize. With the report you received earlier tonight about the Morgan School Building project now reaching its final completion, there are further wheels that have to be set in motion as it relates to that project. So the Board of Education at its August meeting will make a determination to accept the building. They have to formally accept it. After the Board of Ed makes that formal acceptance, the Town Council will then formally convey the building to them to make it officially theirs. That also sets in motion the process to secure the final reimbursements that we've been waiting for, which have been held pending while we wait for the project to reach its inevitable end. So there'll still be more Morgan work to do coming during the summer. Our new building official, Richard Plinus, started work this past Monday. Ed has now moved on to his new life in New Hampshire, and Richard already was introduced to a number of building projects with Ed when Ed was here, so we got a feeling for what's currently in the hopper in Clinton going forward. COVID reporting, I did enjoy the ability not to have to put out the town manager's dashboard for COVID in June, since we had no positive cases in June. Our last case came in at the end of May. However, July has seen an uptick in cases coming through now, as reported by CRAD. So unfortunately, I have to go back in the business of producing that report once a week to show what's been going on in town in terms of COVID positive testing, as well as updates for whatever data flows from the state on vaccinations. If you've ever looked at the report, there's some granularity in terms of the vaccinations for which age groups are fully vaccinated. It seems we've done a bang-up job on the 60 plus, 65 plus category, where we've done over 100% of our population. But some other age categories seem to have plateaued a bit. So as COVID continues to spread and be a thing in our lives, the report will still be generated. Of note, I did have a conversation with the Clinton Housing Authority. They do have an interest in trying to do an expansion at Glen Haven. So there was some preliminary discussions in terms of where they want to go, trying to direct them and help them understand the types of financing that are out there. They're going to be looking to engage a consultant to help them figure out financing for a future project. With that, it will likely be a request for the town to assist them in a financial way with some of that pre-development expense. So there'll be more information flowing from them, which I'll bring to the council for your continued discussion. And then from a hiring standpoint, now that the council has approved the senior program coordinator position, that was advertised in the local Charlotte Times, but we also put it out in the Connecticut Association of Senior Center Directors to try and fish out of that pond. It was also put on the Connecticut chapter of the National Association of Social Workers to try and link up with that group if there's folks that are interested in that position. The truck driver that was added in the budget process for Public Works is also out for advertising at this point in time. That economic development coordinator position with the focusing on business visitation is the next one to go out on the street to solicit applications. If there's any questions on the report, I'm happy to answer.
Carl, with the COVID reporting, there's increased interest in finding out whether the people who are getting most recent Delta virus and/or any COVID case have been vaccinated. So whether or not you can filter that back up to CRAD so that we can find out that information in your reports.
Yeah, and right now that level of granularity is not coming through. It's just sort of a binary positive or not. So I don't have that to put out. We've gotten some Facebook feedback on that, but data doesn't exist at this point.
Carl, how's the response been for the senior program coordinator in the EDC, the Economic Development Coordinator?
The EDC position I haven't put out yet, and the senior job ad just went out at the end of last week, so it's a little early.
Anyone else? Nope. Thank you, Carl. We'll now move on to 13, Town Council Committee Liaison Reports. Anyone? Tim?
Okay, I'm going to report on the Economic Development Commission meeting that was recently held. And Carl does have a note in his report. He didn't mention it, but the EDC is moving forward on a plan to redevelop downtown. There are renderings that have been completed. You can all see it on the website. What is projected to be the changes in downtown. I personally thought they were terrific. Will certainly enhance the beauty of our downtown. And the EDC has done a tremendous job in working with Mr. Williams and his group to make this happen. And I know that they have presented information to Carl, and so this should be going forward. We already have an owner in town. For those of you that are in the audience, if you don't know this, we do have a new owner for the building that's on the corner of Main Street and Post Office Square. And he wants to begin the project of enhancing his building. So we do have at least one owner. I think we might even have 2 or 3 others that are also interested, but take the first one to get things going. But we do have that one candidate. I see that Bob Werner is in the audience today. Bob has been very instrumental in working with our town businesses, our manufacturers specifically, to try to help them exist during this COVID period. If you haven't heard the word STEM, that is a project where the school is involved in trying to encourage students that there is if you're not college bound, or if you don't have an interest in college, there certainly could be an interest here right in the town of Clinton in some of the great manufacturing companies that we have. Bob certainly could speak more intelligently about this than I, but this program has really already been instrumental in Bosch in town to have, I think, 7 or 8 Morgan students. 14. How many now? 14? So it's gone from 8 to 14 in about a week. So I think this is a tremendous program for our businesses in town. This is showing that Clinton is a leader in the state of Connecticut in producing work opportunities, not just for our businesses here, but obviously you've got down the road You've got in New London, obviously, a workload capacity there where they need thousands of people to bring them to capacity for the new work that they've received from the government. So Economic Development Commission in town has really done, I think, a tremendous job in promoting our businesses and our students and the livelihood of our community. So a job well done, I think, for EDC. Thank you.
Tim. Anybody else?
Yes, Planning and Zoning. Planning and Zoning will hold a public hearing on August 9th for an application to allow the old CVS property on Main Street to house an animal grooming and boarding business in addition to a veterinary hospital. And then at their September 13th meeting, they will hold a public hearing for regulation amendments to the recreational medical marijuana proposal. Currently, the zoning regulations prohibit dispensaries and production for medical marijuana. Planning and Zoning needs to address whether Clinton will permit a store to sell recreational marijuana. Only one would be allowed in town because per the state, only one store is allowed per 25,000 people. Restrictions could be added, similar to what we've seen with liquor stores in terms of proximity to schools, houses of worship, etc. Town planners report Big Y is projected to open in early November, which was somewhat of a surprise. And then Inland Wetlands met on July the 6th for its regular monthly meeting. At that, I learned what a beaver deceiver water leveler device is. I still really don't have a proper feel for what it does. But they did, Michael Hood of the Clinton Land Conservation Trust did say they were going to put one of these things in hopes of alleviating some flooding. So Kathy King did tell me that Land Use Office has received 34 blight and land use complaints this year, so that they seem to be pretty busy with that. So I'm interested to see where our subcommittee goes with blight. That's it.
Thanks, Eric. Anybody else? Nope, all good. All right, we will now move on to executive session. Motion to go into executive session and invite Carl and Mary. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so we're back from executive session. We will now move on to item number 15, which is employment contract extension for the tax collector. We look for a motion to allow the town manager to move forward with an employment contract extension for the town collector, tax collector.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. Item 16, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Wow, delay on that one. Second? All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.